We have reached the midpoint of the year, so without further ado, let's take a look at some of the indie games releasing in May. First up, we have Grid Miner, an interesting looking strategy/puzzle game that tasks the player with mining resources and expanding your space station. As the name suggests, the space stations are constructed on a grid, and it's your job to create the most productive station possible, with new buildings unlocking as you progress through the levels. It's sure to appeal to those who have enjoyed playing some of the factory-based construction games that were released over the last few years, such as the Dyson Sphere project and Factorio. Grid Miner comes to Steam May 3rd.
Facilities in the Orc Cloud. Join us now through the Grid Miner program. Maintain your quotas and be part of our prosperous future. Available on Steam by Kyroscope Games.
I'm a sucker for a good roguelike, especially those that try to bring something new to the genre. Loot River is one of those, with the developer mixing fast, responsive combat with Tetris. Wait, it's not as stupid as it sounds. Each level is made up of platforms that you can move around and slot into other platforms in order to traverse the area. Using this ability, you can zip around the level using these platforms to retreat from enemy attacks and reposition yourself for a better direction of attack. The combat in the demo felt nice and responsive, which is a must for a game like this, and with the unique way you move around levels, Loot River could be a great addition to the roguelike genre. Loot River comes to Steam and the Xbox series of consoles May 3rd. Next up is Citizen Sleeper, a sci-fi role-playing game where you choose which workers you want to help as they navigate their way through life on an old space station. Using dice, clocks and drives, you will make decisions that will create a player-led experience. Each day you roll dice which are then assigned to the actions you choose that will lead to different outcomes across the station. With a stylistic art style and the promise of a different experience for each player, Citizen Sleeper could be a really cool game indeed. Citizen Sleeper comes to Steam May 5th. Crown and Pawns Kingdom of Deceit is a title that reminds me of the classic 90s game Broken Sword. Much like that game, Crown and Pawns is a point-and-click adventure that sees you travelling the world to solve an historical mystery. As with any point-and-click adventure game, whether the game succeeds or fails will largely come down to how well it tells its story, and hopefully developer Tag of Joy will be able to weave an interesting tale. Crown and Pawns Kingdom of Deceit comes to Steam and Xbox One May the 6th.
Huh. That doesn't seem right. So, what is this place?
That is my alma mater, Vilnius University.
Are you the one I'm supposed to meet here?
Who knows? Perhaps.
Breaking into a church. Feeling like a true adventurer. And, not gonna lie, a little bit like a criminal.
Don't worry, it's gonna be fine. Crowns and Pawns, Kingdom of Deceit. Coming on May 6th, 2022.
The fifth game on this month's list is probably my favourite, and a game I have been following for quite a while. Song of Conquest is a turn-based strategy game in the vein of the classic 90s series Heroes of Might and Magic. You take control of a faction with the aim to build your army and conquer lands. Combat takes place on a hex-based grid where you use a combination of units and spells to best your enemies. The game very much sticks to the tried and tested formula of the genre, which is no bad thing, as when done correctly it can lead to a brilliant game. The one thing that does make it stand out though is some truly beautiful pixel art, among the best I've seen in any game. If the developers managed to match the gameplay of the old Heroes of Might and Magic games alongside the amazing artwork, this game could be something very special. Song of Conquest releases into Steam Early Access May 10th. Next is a really interesting game that reminds me a bit of Alpha Centauri, the classic Sid Meier's game, crossed with the old XCOM games. Like Alpha Centauri, Cantata is kind of a 4X game, with you tasked with taking the role of one of 9 commanders and exploring, expanding your base and fighting your way across a large map in order to discover its secrets and survive the harsh conditions. One of the things that made Alpha Centauri stand out was that you could edit your units, which is something Cantata allows you to do. You can even import your own sprites if you so wish. Similar to XCOM, combat is turn-based and takes place on a hex grid, and the muted pixel art is very reminiscent of those games. This mix could create something that is rather special, so hopefully as the game works its way through its early access period, After School Studio can create a game worthy of the comparisons. Cantata comes to Steam Early Access May 12th.
Leave none alive. Spill blood for the god below.
Next up we have Little Witch in the Woods, a cute looking life sim style game that has you playing as a young witch helping the residents of a village in order to complete your apprenticeship and become a fully fledged witch. To do this you will be gathering resources in order to make potions, making friends with the villagers, building a bond with your cat, exploring the world and of course fishing. It ticks all the life sim boxes and has the cute art style you want from one of these games. Little Witch in the Woods comes to Steam Early Access May 17th. V Rising is a game that is partly on this list because it is from Stunlock Studios, the developers of Battle Right, a MOBA that while short-lived in popularity, had some interesting ideas and really good combat. V Rising is the next game from the studio, and is billed as a vampire survival experience. As a recently awakened vampire, you must rebuild your castle and grow your strength, whilst fending off attacks from enemies and maybe even other players. You can team up with friends to hunt and attack castles in co-op, or just roam around solo. Combat looks like it takes inspiration from Battle Right, which is a good sign. It's not clear how the combat with other players works though, as to whether you are all on the same map/server, or everyone's castle is an instance that you can visit and attack, but it's an interesting premise that could have potential. V Rising comes out on Steam May 17th.
Gather your army of darkness and conquer every corner of the world. Stalk the night. Hunt for blood. Become terror itself. Warriors of the night have returned. The vampires are rising.
The penultimate game for May is Souldiers, a good-looking action puzzle platformer in the 16-bit vein, which has precise combat that rewards considered play. You choose one of 3 class types, magic, melee or range, and you can level them up with new abilities as you progress. The gameplay felt good from my time with the demo, with tight controls and a nice variety to what you were doing in levels. Hopefully the full game can keep that up, as I do like a good action platformer. Souldiers comes to PlayStation 4 and 5, Steam, Switch, and Xbox One and the series of consoles, May 19th.
Whatever your choice, your quest will lead you through Terragaia's magnificent landscapes. In a world where life and death seem to blur into one, become the toughest warrior, master new abilities, and retrieve powerful artifacts. But don't get too confident. Never underestimate the enemy. They can be more powerful than you imagine. Will you be strong enough to succeed and bring your fellow soldiers back home? Soldiers.
Finally for May, in what has been a bumper month, we have Soda Crisis, a fast-paced side-scrolling shooter which unusually for the indie scene is not a pixel art game. In fact, the style reminds me a bit of My Name is Pedro. The premise is fairly simple. You have a gun and you must make your way from left to right, killing everything in sight. The game looks nice and frantic and promises that upon death you will reset in seconds, and as long as these resets are generous and the controls are tight, then Soda Crisis could be a blast. Soda Crisis comes to Steam Early Access 24th of May. Phew, that was a lot of games for this month. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider giving it a like, and I'll see you all next time.